Welcome! How are you? I hope you're doing well and thank you for sticking around. This project was really exciting for me when the movie was announced. I love the idea of combining my favorite artist with my favorite character to cosplay, so I had to do it. But of course I was late and the costume didn't turn out as great as I'd hoped. Anyway, I don't want to start the video on a pessimistic note because in the end, I think you can still learn something from this experience. So let's get started. For the corset, I bought a cheap one from a popular website, you know the one. It's a simple soft white corset. It looks like this in the front, but I actually use the back as the front. Since it's the back side, we need to make it look more like the front of Harley's corset. First, using a pencil, I sketched a wider, more open neckline and a pointed center at the bottom based on reference pictures. Then I cut along the pencil lines with scissors and evened the cuts by folding the corset in half and aligning the sides. Here's what it looked like after cutting. I folded the hem inward and sewed it accordingly. For the paint job, I did a little math. For example, there are about 5 rhombuses across the front of your corset, and my corset is about 30 centimeters wide, so each rhombus is approximately 6 centimeters wide. Vertically, there are about 2 full rhombuses, and my corset is 26 centimeters tall, so the height of each rhombus is 13 centimeters. I guess my teachers were right about geometry being useful in real life. I used the cardboard box to stretch the fabric without wrinkles. I drew one rhombus with those dimensions on stiff paper to use as a stencil, starting from the center. Since my corset has a center line, which was super helpful, Harley's corset has one full rhombus and about 3/4 of one at the top, so I tried to mimic that. Once I had the middle row, the rest was easier. I just aligned my stencil and continued the pattern until I surpassed the sides of the corset, covering any areas that would be visible under the rest of the outfit. Using black fabric paint, you can also use acrylic, I painted the rhombuses that were meant to be black. For the decorations, I used white tulle fabric for the upper part. I folded it lengthwise, cut 3 strips, and sewed each with a loose stitch near the edge, similar to what we did in another Harley Quinn tutorial. This is what the corset looked like after the paint dried. I also cut a piece of cardboard to use as boning for the inside. Next, I gathered the tulle strips by holding one thread and sliding the fabric along it to create scrunchies, which I placed inside the corset's chest area to plan their positioning. Once I was happy, I hot glued them in place, trimming the excess fabric after putting the corset on to ensure I didn't overdo it. For the bottom of the corset, I used a piece of off-white fabric, folding it so it was longer on the sides and shorter vertically. Using reference pictures, I formed pleats, pinned them, and my mom kindly hand-sewed them so they wouldn't slide. After ironing the pleats, I glued them to the corset little by little using clips to hold the fabric in place. The blazer was a tough challenge and I followed a rather unorthodox method. My sewing machine was broken and the mechanic couldn't get it fixed in time. I'm still waiting, in fact. So I had to revert to my pre-sewing days. And let me tell you, it wasn't fun. I found a cheap red blazer that had almost the same pattern as Harley's, so I decided to build on it. The sleeves definitely needed to be shorter and the collar was different. Here's where it got interesting. Since I couldn't sew, I had to layer shiny fabric over the existing coat. This meant I had to create a sort of pattern for all the pieces and glue them on top. I bought some red lining fabric and laid it on top of one sleeve. By pinning and stretching the fabric over the sleeve, I could roughly trace the sleeve pattern. I marked it with soap and then removed it from the mannequin. After connecting the marks, I cut out the shape, tried it on the mannequin, it was a bit tight, and made some adjustments. Once satisfied, I cut a second piece for the other sleeve. If you're following along, don't forget to iron each piece before continuing. I also used folded paper towels inside the blazer sleeves to keep them puffed up and prevent accidentally making them tighter. I pinned the fabric pieces on top of the sleeves, trimming any excess fabric to avoid wrinkles, and then used my trusty glue gun to secure the edges around the shoulders. I wasn't too worried about the shoulder area since more fabric would be added later. I also glued the fabric along the seam under the arm, folding the edges at the bottom and securing them with glue. For the back of the blazer, I laid it flat on the fabric and traced around it. I continued the seam lines downwards, mimicking the way her coat is sewn, which appears to be made of 4 vertical panels. Using my fingers, I felt where the edges of the back piece were under the blazer and marked the waistline to know where the flare begins. I unfolded the skirt of the fabric and marked where it should end. After removing the blazer, I connected the dots and cut out the fabric, leaving about 3 cm for seam allowance. I ironed it and glued it on, starting by tucking the upper part into the collar and pinning the fabric in place. It's important to make sure the new fabric bonds with the original to avoid any awkward sagging or visible hems. I know Harley's coat doesn't have a seam around the waist, but I glued the fabric there for added stability. To figure out this part of the pattern, I laid the fabric on top, felt for the edges and marked them with soap. I duplicated this for the other side, remembering to mirror the pieces. I pinned the fabric on top, trimmed any excess and glued it in place, folding the edges as I went. For the front panels, I used the same approach, laying the fabric on top, pinning it, marking it, and cutting the pieces with seam allowance. For the bottom of the blazer, I needed help holding the fabric in place, so my mom assisted while I pinned and later glued it. To create the collar, I laid a piece of fabric on top of the blazer and sketched the shape I wanted with soap. I cut out 4 pieces in total, 2 mirrored. Then my mom sewed the outer edges right sides together before turning them inside out. I glued the collar pieces together on the inside, trimmed any excess fabric from the sides where the collar would go, and glued the collar on bit by bit. Once the 2 collar pieces met at the top, I glued them together, knowing that this part wouldn't be visible. For the pleated mesh on the sleeves, I used fabric folded lengthwise and marked at 13 cm and 15 cm. After cutting 2 long strips, I started pleating the fabric in a zigzag pattern and pressing it with an iron. When the pleats became difficult to hold, I used bobby pins to secure them. I continued pressing the pleats until they met in the middle, then pinned them in place. Once cooled, I folded the strips in half and cut them. I glued the strips together and attached them to the inside of the sleeves. Regarding the diamond pattern on Harley's blazer, I know I should have sewn this before doing anything else, and I regret not doing so. I didn't have a sewing machine, but I don't know, I should have thought of so. At first, I ambitiously thought I could figure out a way to recreate the design without sewing, but it didn't turn out as expected. In the end, I cut long strips of fabric, applied thin lines of hot glue underneath, and shaped the glue with my fingers. After cooling, I peeled the glue off and repeated this until I had 3 long strips with a glue line beneath them. At some point I stopped filming because what I was doing was already painful enough. I didn't want to film it, watch it again, edit it and have it here on video how hard I failed on this project. I then attempted to glue the strips onto the blazer in a diamond pattern, but sadly it didn't look great. The skirt was the easiest part. I found a cheap black faux leather skirt that just needed zippers on the sides. I bought 2 15 cm zippers, this should have been silver, but oh well. I marked where the end of each zipper should go, ripped the stitching up to that point, and glued the seams back together using, you guessed it, hot glue. I positioned the zippers, glued them on the inside, and carefully folded the edges over, making sure not to get glue on the zipper teeth. And voila! The skirt was done, so cute and easy. Now for the wig. Oh, it's such a beauty. Long, smooth, with a perfect platinum blonde shade and great lace front. But of course, I had to ruin it for this look. Harley's hair in the film has dark brown roots, so I followed Alexa Poletti's wig dyeing technique. I will link it in the description. Since I didn't have a styrofoam head, I used the cutting board to separate the wefts and painted the roots with a black marker, smoothing them with alcohol-soaked Q-tips. I repeated this for days, working my way through the wig. Once I finished the roots, I cut the lace close to the hairline. Hello, it's me! The wig was longer than I needed, so I trimmed it to a few centimeters below Harley's length, cutting it at an angle to create a more natural look. For the final styling, I used hair gel and hairspray to sleek it back and give it that wet look she has in the film. I know what you're going to think, she has dark brown roots, why are you using a black marker? Well, I didn't have access to a dark brown alcohol-based marker, so yeah, I did this. For the makeup, I used my palest foundation and the lightest concealer to highlight certain areas, trying to mimic Lady Gaga's features. I blended everything and set it with powder. I used cream contour to emphasize her prominent cheekbones, upper lip, nose and jawline. Gaga also has deep set eyes, so I used brown eyeshadow to recreate that look. Her eyeliner is fairly simple, so I used a thin flat brush and a black eyeliner pencil to apply it just below my lower waterline, drawing a point in the middle and extending it into a straight line for a few centimeters. She also has lines that start from the middle of her eyebrows and extend toward the inner corner of the eyes, so I replicated that as well. Then I did a simple wing starting from the inner corners of my eyes. Once that was done, I connected the lines on top by dragging them from the middle of my eyebrows to the end of the winged liner, blending them lightly with a brush, and extended the point in the middle of my eyebrows towards my forehead for a few centimeters. I finished the eyes with mascara. For the lips, I lined them with a lip liner first, even though she doesn't seem to use one, because red lipstick intimidates me. I later overlined my lips slightly to get a shape closer to hers, then I applied the red lipstick. After putting on the wig and securing it, the look was complete. And here's a close-up. For the second look she wears though, things were simpler, you just smudge everything. I was outside for the photo shoot, so I used my fingers to mess up the makeup. When I recreated the look at home, I used black eyeshadow to enhance the smudged effect, especially under the eyes. For the second look, I also prepared this black coat by gluing the same red fabric I used for the blazer on the inside to make it look like the lining of the coat is red. And as for the wig, I dyed the roots the same way I did the other ones and then gave it a haircut. I cut the bangs so they won't be in my eyes and added some more by cutting 2 locks of hair on the sides. Then I chopped the rest to be shorter and more rough looking like hairs. And again I used hair gel to make them look dirty and messy and stay like that. That's all folks. If you're still watching, you are a true fan, thank you. I considered cutting out the blazer section, but maybe it'll serve as a lesson on what to not do and give you some more techniques for other costumes. I hope you enjoyed the video despite the challenges. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye! Thank you guys.
Thank you.